Well, Nick, thanks for sitting down with me. I appreciate it. Again, good to meet you in person finally after about 5 years of going back and forth with you. Energy has been something that is clearly topical right now. All the changes in the energy marketplace, all of the new innovation that's going on in energy. What has CONSOL been doing to really adapt to this and be on the forefront?
Energy always been a big issue within our regional economy, national economy, and now the global economy the last number of years. CONSOL Energy still focused upon those tried and true forms of energy production in coal and natural gas. But what's really changed the last number of years is how we've evolved and deployed technology to both the coal and natural gas side to become more efficient and maybe more importantly, develop and extract new horizons of natural gas production on behalf of the national and global economy. The other thing that we've been spending a lot of time on when you look at energy is what I call the third rail of energy infrastructure, which is increasingly becoming water. And water is becoming a bigger and bigger issue on all the different forms of energy, from renewables to fossil fuels like coal and natural gas. And the opportunities that exist today to apply technology, whether it's off-the-shelf technology or new forms of technology, to water issues, to either reduce the water footprint or to become more efficient or to come up with treatment methods that look at improving the water balance. We think there's going to be a very bright future there, and we sort of think of water effectively as our third business segment within the company moving forward.
Give me an example in that water area where you guys are beginning to make some change, whether it's solutions or really impact.
The biggest change for us has been more of a cultural approach and philosophy view of water itself. We've always been a big handler of water within the Appalachian region. We currently handle somewhere between 35 and 36 billion gallons of water a year. And we've always tended to look at that as a necessary evil or something that was done out of more of a compliance interest than anything else, and more of a liability, quite frankly. What's changed there philosophically and culturally is now we view that as an opportunity, and finding ways to use and utilize that 35 or 36 billion gallons a year to the benefit of the fossil fuel industry, the electricity industry, or everything in between. So taking more of a philosophical approach of looking at that from a headache and a liability and turning that into something that's advantageous and a service that's needed, that's probably been the biggest example I can give you of how we've changed our approach on water.
Fantastic. You know, what that tells me is that you really approach business challenges, viewing them as opportunities to create new solutions and really expand the breadth and depth of what CONSOL does. Give me another example of a business challenge, more general, that you guys faced and what solution you came up with to overcome it and how it became a new opportunity.
And taking that challenge and wanting to turn it into an opportunity sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's often very challenging in the way it works in the real world with a specific challenge. The best illustration I can think of for CONSOL Energy has been our approach on safety. Safety has always been something that's been critical to us throughout our history, and we've been around for almost 150 years. So we've learned what works very well. We've also learned the hard way through those 150 years what doesn't work very well when it comes to safety, or what might happen if you lose your focus upon the value of safety. So when you look at that challenge and turning that into an opportunity, we first again started with the philosophy of safety itself and said, what is our culture going to be when it comes to safety? Is it truly going to be our top value? Not just our top priority, but our top value that will not change during the market swings up and down or time frame, because a value is something that's constant. So first and foremost, is that our most important and top value? Secondly, if it's our top value, what's the expectation going to be? Is accidents part of the business about extracting natural gas and extracting coal resources? Or can we truly take an approach and a view where zero accidents of any kind across the entire employee base is the expected outcome and the expected goal? We've taken that latter approach, and our Absolute Zero program, as we call it, is a very simple concept which says nothing more than the only acceptable standard of performance is no accidents to the employees on any given day across the entire company. And anything that's an accident, no matter how small or how slight, is an exception to that rule, a violation of that philosophy. So you had that philosophical change that needed to occur to start with challenge turning into opportunity. Then, over the last 3 or 4 years, it turned and evolved into, once you had the culture and the philosophy, now what are the tactical things that we're going to do to improve our performance? How are we going to bring the science and the technology to the table to get smarter about risk identification, hazard mitigation, overall employee training, all of those things that in the end of the day really lead you to a better place on safety performance than you would have been without them.
You know, we talk about change. Change is always inevitable in any industry. And you talked about change of a philosophical approach within your organization and the culture. Communication seemingly is the way that you're able to drive that in almost any industry. Is that how you approach this change of the philosophical vision and values within CONSOL?
Communication is the lifeblood of taking a concept or an opportunity and making it a reality. And with a company as large as CONSOL, with nearly 10,000 employees and 6,000 to 8,000 contractors on top of it, you're talking about a very large organization spread across a large area. So the ability to communicate and to efficiently communicate a concept or a philosophy or something as finite and specific as a new technology or a new process or a new standard within the company across your entire operating base, that becomes the lifeblood of whether or not that concept or that improvement comes to fruition and when it comes to fruition. And sometimes the when part is just as challenging and just as important as to whether or not it actually comes to fruition. So you can't overemphasize the importance of communication, especially in a complex and large organization or a complex and large world, such as what we see in the energy spaces today throughout the United States and the globe.
You know, with such a large organization with such a wide footprint of these people, what are some of the tactics that you use for communication, whether it's channels, initiatives, meetings? What are those ways?
There are going to have to be, it's pretty much what I would call a portfolio approach to communication. In other words, we don't put all of our eggs in one basket through one means or method of communication, but we will utilize a range of those, like you would an investment portfolio as an example. And it's everything from closed circuit TVs that we have throughout the company that will broadcast at every mine portal, at every drill rig installation, at every towboat on the river that transports our coal, what the newest safety procedures or initiatives or technological breakthroughs may be, or updating us on compliance issues or regulatory issues so that everybody's on the same page. It's through training. We do an extensive amount of training throughout our workforce. When you compare the training that we do today to as little as 5 or 6 years ago, it's increased substantially, and that trend is going to continue. That's a good thing. We look at that as an investment in communication that is going to get that know-how rate of return that's going to be very good, not just for the shareholders of the company and not just for the other stakeholders, but most importantly for the employees themselves, because they'll be in a more safe and more compliant place. So there's a whole range of different communication tools that we use, and I think in total that is a group effort, it is a portfolio approach that's going to put you in a better position to succeed on a communication challenge and opportunity.
Excellent. You know, when you come to talking about a portfolio of communication issues, of these different methodologies, of message, of your absolute zero program of these things, somebody has to take ownership of this portfolio, make sure this gets implemented. Who essentially owns this communication approach?
The communication, since really the communication approach goes back to the messaging and the content of what you're saying, really the ownership is across the entire company. And it probably, in reality, extends beyond the employees within the company and extends to our partners and other stakeholders that touch or deal with the company in some way, shape, or form. It might be the customers downstream that we're selling the coal and natural gas to. It could be our contractor partners who are providing services at our rig sites, at our coal mines, or anyone in between, the public at large for that matter. So in some ways, everyone owns it, but it's also critically important that that communication process and the messaging behind the communication, what you're saying, that it's viewed to be owned by action, not by just words, with the leadership of the company. And the leadership of the company for us means many different people. It's not just our CEO or chairman, it's our CEO and chairman all the way down to a mine foreman, all the way down to an employee that's working on the barge line, or all the way down to somebody that's standing on one of our rigs right now. So there's ownership that needs to be shown through leadership from the very top on through the organization, and collectively there's got to be that collective ownership of communication to make sure that it's not just someone saying something, it's a group effort. Everybody's got a role, everybody's got a responsibility, and last but not least, your actions have to be consistent with what you're saying.
Fantastic. You know, innovation, clearly the way to move an organization forward. There's a misconception in the general public about fossil fuels and organizations in coal and natural gas and oil, that it's not an innovative industry. But the reality is the exact opposite. In order to have this industry grow, it has to be innovative. You mentioned technology. you mentioned safety. Talk a little bit about, from your own perspective, how are you an innovative leader in this type of industry, and how do you take an employee innovation within your organization to move the industry forward into the future?
The rhetoric is what you say it is, with the perception versus the reality being something completely different. I'll give you examples on the coal and natural gas side. If you start on the natural gas side as an example, today, CONSOL Energy, the natural gas industry in general, has seen an evolution occur where as little as 5 years ago, before the shale revolution, the break-even price, I'll call it, for natural gas development, the price that you need natural gas to be at to get a rate of return is equivalent to the industry's cost of capital. It was somewhere, depending on which expert you viewed the study from, somewhere between $7 and $8 a million BTU. And below that, the rate of returns weren't going to be there, you'd be destroying value, activity would drop off. Above that, you'd have a window and a rate of return above your cost of capital. Because of the shale revolution, which was driven by technology and technological innovation and entrepreneurism in the natural gas E&P space, because of that revolution, when you look now, just as little as 5 years ago, where you were at $7 or $8 a million BTU break even, that's somewhere probably around $5 a million BTU. Now, the implications of that are very significant, because that innovation has resulted not just in a lower break-even natural gas price for economic activity, but that economic activity, i.e. the drilling, is now going to spur opportunity and innovation all the way downstream from it, from pipelines and gas processing to conversion technologies that are looking to natural gas as a feedstock into their activity, whether it's chemicals or cracker facilities or things like that. All of that, which is a cumulative impact, order of magnitude more than just the drilling itself that we tend to think of, that benefits from it. You go over to the coal side, the best example I can give you there is clean coal technology. And people often question clean coal technology, what it means, does it exist? It absolutely, positively exists. It's existed for decades. So when you look at traditional pollutants, such as SO2, or NOx, or mercury, or particulate, the fact of the matter is we've identified technology to address those issues. We've developed it. We've deployed it across a power generating fleet. It's been going on for about 30 years, and it's been going on to the tune of tens of billions of dollars of investment in the power generation grid, so that where we stand today, a new coal-fired power plant, 90% lower in emissions of those traditional pollutants than the one it replaces on average. So if you want to look at innovation, and you want to look at a track record of innovation that spans decades, you don't have to look any further than the natural gas and coal industries.
You know, Nick, one of the things that I take you for is an eyes up, ears open leader, that you approach things by always looking and asking the question, what if? What's the greatest lesson by doing so that you've learned, that you've been able to apply internally to the organization?
The biggest lesson or eye-opener for me throughout the last number of years with the opportunities I've had within my career has been, I've always been more of a numbers analytical person, being a chemical engineer and trained in that discipline, where the numbers, the assets, the nuts and bolts, so to speak, those in my mind were what mattered at the end of the day. What I've had my eyes open to through the years is the importance that people play in the overall endeavor and in your ultimate success as a firm or as a company or within an activity. And the way I think I've come to understand that through the years is that the assets are still critically important, but that's just the potential of what might be or what could be. So if you have assets, that's great, you need those. If you don't have any potential. There's not going to be a might be. But that's just potential. And the converter, so to speak, of that potential that the assets present, that's going to convert it into reality for a company or for shareholders or for the stakeholders at large, that is the people, the team within that company. And that, at the end of the day, is a necessary prerequisite to success. Without that converter, you never get beyond the potential. You never get to the reality.
How do you approach your culture? How do you approach your people within the organization?
The most important thing we do is, at the very start, we establish what our values are. And we literally enumerate them for the team. So we say, what are our top values and which one is first, which one is second, which one follows it third. For us, that's safety, as we discussed. The second most important value is compliance, not just with the letter of the law, but with the spirit of the regulations and laws, whether they're internal controls or external. And third is continuous improvement, taking a long-term view over the short-term view on behalf of the company and the activity. So by simply just stating your values, calling them values, because you can't change values over time, they're a constant, and then numbering them, enumerating them for everyone, so that this is the most important, this is third most important. If there's a conflict, here's which one trumps the other. That's the most important thing that we've done. The second most important thing that we've done, of course, is that our actions, from everything to decision making, to supporting certain decisions in a tough spot that are consistent with the decision falling in line with those values, to incentives and the way we compensate people and the way we view people, those actions have to be consistent with the values that you articulated. Those two things alone have done wonders and would do wonders for just about any industry or activity you can think of. Again, very simple concepts, but sometimes very challenging to employ on a consistent basis.
Where do you look for ideas for self-improvement as a leader yourself?
I think there's two broad groups that I look to over time for help and for insight. One is the management team that you work with and around. That's a team that, at least in my case, I've been lucky enough to work with them for a number of years. They're the best and brightest in the industries that we work within. There's no doubt about that. So getting that comfort level and that trust level with the exchange of ideas and thoughts as time goes on, that's the lifeblood of any successful organization. The other side, though, is almost the mirror image of that, which is looking towards entities and individuals with insights and experiences completely away from the industries that we work within, completely away from the fossil fuel industries. And it's amazing how many already established processes, technologies, concepts are out there in entirely different industries that are being applied regularly that are viewed as innovations or groundbreakers with the coal and natural gas or fossil fuel industries that we operate within. So every time we tend to look outside of our box, so to speak, beyond our industries, we always come away with sort of an injection of innovation that keeps us going. So those are the two different groups I think we look to the most.
And then finally, talk a little bit about some of the tactics and strategies that you were able to employ to weather the company through the recession.
Yeah, the recession we've been through recently, significant, continues to be significant, even though technically we may not be in recession. But I'll tell you the short answer to that, because we think about that an awful lot. Since we've been in the energy industry, we've seen a lot of volatility, a lot of peaks and cycles through the years. And we become used to a certain extent or acclimated to a certain extent of those swings that will inevitably occur. Now this has been a historically significant one in terms of its extremes on the decline that we've seen. So in many ways this one has been different with nothing else magnitude. But I'll also tell you that if you go back to those values, and those are truly the values of the organization, and we're operating in two commodities that we produce and in the industries that we work within. If you're the safest and most compliant and most efficient operator in those two industries of coal and natural gas extraction, you're going to be the most profitable or the most successful, whether it's a market peak or a market trough. So in many ways we keep it simple. And the way we manage through those downturns is we stick to those values, and as long as we're pushing for a better place on safety performance, and as long as we're pushing for a better place on compliance, and as long as we're pushing for continuous improvement, we're going to be fine in any market and any market cycle.
Great. Well, Nick, thank you very much.
Thank you.